I think there's a lot of issues that are going on with the city right now, but several of them can be condensed down to one source, and that's poor communication that the city has with various citizens and other communities within Lawrence itself. When you look at the sidewalk issue, when you look at Queens Road, when you look at the 9th Street project, a lot of issues that are hard issues to begin with are made even worse because of a lack of communication and transparency within the city staff of Lawrence and how they communicate with the various citizens and citizen engagement groups. So I think my first priority would be cleaning up a lot of that communication issues, making sure that we are completely transparent on a variety of activities that we do, being notified, for example, making sure the city is required to notify various interest groups and other stakeholders involved in various projects would go a long way to cleaning up some conflicts that we have within the city. So that's my number one priority. Oh, it absolutely hurts it. I don't think there's any question about that. It's Plan 2040, if I had one big issue, is that it is so restrictive about our boundaries within the city. There will always be, I think, external pressures on the city population because of our character. People want to move to Lawrence. So in addition to our own organic growth, you also have people from outside communities in Lawrence wanting and desiring to move to Lawrence, with employment being their secondary concern because they just want to be part of our community. We have to recognize those pressures, and we have to recognize that that is going to put a strain on our affordable housing market. Now, I do think there's still some infill that can be done, and I absolutely agree with prioritizing infill development, but putting those barriers on our city limits, especially for the next 20 years, will do nothing but hurt us in the long term. We need to be open about being able to expand our borders as a city, knowing that this is a community that people want to join. I don't believe that within the city we should be in the business of wealth creation specifically. I do think that we have an obligation to our citizens to make sure that we are an attractive city for job creation to be able to come. I do think that there's some gaps in our economic development policies specifically. We can help large corporations and companies come into town with tax incentives and things of that nature. We have some investment in some small startup development, but not really enough. But there's that gap, that small business development area, between the ones that start out with 5 employees to 50 employees, that there's really no good economic development profile that we have as part of a city that we can do. We really need to ramp up that because that's the core of the job creation. Those small businesses are what grow into the larger businesses as a community. That's that organic growth that we need. The $20,000 economic development funding that goes directly to the Chamber of Commerce, that's not the only economic development funding that we have in the city. It's a major part of it, though. I have always been concerned about the source of that money and where it's going. At the same time, we need to recognize that there are other things that we can do in terms of economic development within the city. We have an opportunity zone that I think the city can do some public-private partnerships in to help increase that economic development growth. A lot of the budget concerns, especially within this other budget, cuts were made and other increases were made, and a lot of the people within the city commission were even quoted in the paper recently saying, well, they didn't think too much about certain steps, which is unfortunate. So I think we need to take a harder look at whether or not we need to cut things from the economic development budget, and apparently take a second, third, and fifth look at things, even though we're about to pass it, unfortunately. Currently, I am vice chair of the Public Incentives Review Committee. I was previously the chairman last year. Helped pass a lot of incentives for the Boys and Girls Club, for the Lawrence Humane Shelter as I was chair. Other things that I've done, I'm currently the president of the Prairie Park Neighborhood Association. And more than that, I've just been a concerned citizen for the past, most of my life. I grew up here. I got to see Lawrence before a lot of the big 31st Street expansions that went on in South Lawrence. So I've seen us grow and develop. I've helped see what works in Lawrence, and I've seen what doesn't necessarily work in Lawrence. Having that long-term vision of what has worked in the past and what hasn't certainly allows me to have a unique perspective than some of the other candidates that are out there. the first thing you have to do is not disengage from the people who are actively engaged in the process. They asked us during the city manager interview process, for example, what are the major concerns and what's about the character of Lawrence. We love to argue, we love to discuss, we love to fight, and you do not want to take that away from the engaged citizens. But absolutely, the vast majority of people in Lawrence are not engaged in their local politics. Part of that starts at an early age of being able to engage with, high school students, students within the school district center, but also being able to get out there and talk to the neighborhood groups, being able to get out there and talk to individual groups that may not necessarily have anything to do actively within city government, but are at least large constituencies that you can still discuss. I was thrilled it was about a week and a half ago that some elementary school kids, I believe it was, got together and put together their own proposal for what could go at the hub project. Activities like that are what engage people, and we need to encourage things like that, bringing their ideas to the city and letting them know that we listen and we will hear you.